Are you ready to unleash your full potential? Hello and welcome to the Peak Performance Hour, where we dive deep into the secrets of success and empower you to take your life and career to the next level fast. I am Susan Urban, your host and peak performance coach, and I'm here to guide you on a transformative journey toward greatness. Each week, I will tackle your burning questions and provide live coaching sessions that will propel you toward your goals at lightning speed. Now, whether you're striving for better health, greater wealth, or more happiness, I've got the science-based strategies and proven tactics to help you achieve it all. No dream is too big, and no challenge is too daunting when you have the right mindset and the right guidance. So buckle up and get ready to shatter your limits. And join me as we embark on this exhilarating quest for peak performance. Your extraordinary future starts now. Hello and welcome, everybody. It is so nice to be back with you all. And today's topic is actually going to be relationships, the secrets to success in relationships, whether it comes to family, children, love, marriage, all those good things, and how we can make all that, which is so important, really work, and how to have peak performance in a relationship. And I am joined by a very special, very beautiful man, Mark. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. He will be our guest, and Mark actually has some really good questions in regard to relationship and transitioning and going from empty nest to not empty nest and all those things. So Mark, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I guess I should introduce you a little bit. Mark is a retired elementary school teacher and a staff developer, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there anything else you would like to share with us about you? Obviously, I think it's important for us to know also that you are a resident in our community. And again, very special. Thank you for that, for being here. Anything else you would like to share before we get into the first question?
Well, we're talking about relationships, and I just want to let the public know that I'm married for 30 years, and I have two children, a boy and a girl, mid-20s, and one is on the spectrum. My son is on the autism spectrum. So when we talk about relationships, there's many struggles and stress that goes with that because of our jobs and the upbringing of our children. And I want to know what makes it. What does a great relationship look like when we have such great stress in our lives?
Great question. What does a great relationship look like? Well, we're actually starting from a very high level. And it's an interesting question, Mark, because typically when I work with couples, the very first thing I will ask them is this high level question. So there are a couple of things. One is, now obviously couples typically come to me because they have had issues, problems that they can't resolve, whether it's maybe in communicating with each other or somehow they got disconnected, right? So one of the very first questions, believe it or not, I will ask of both of them is this relationship worth saving, and is this relationship worth having? Which sounds like a loaded question, and yet, unless both parties give me a wholehearted yes, like a heck yes, then, right, unless that's there, then one of them, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, already has one foot out the door, right? And that already speaks volumes. But let's just suppose both parties want to be in that relationship still, right? Let's just suppose that both parties answered yes. The next important question I will ask them, and this is a lot of homework because it is quite a loaded question, but very, very meaningful, because when you have a conversation like this with your spouse or partner, so much is revealed. Because, Mark, you've been married 30 years, same here, right? And you probably know very well that in those 30 years, there were a lot of changes, transitions, right? Transformations, different rules, different regulations, different priorities. That's just the start, right? And so now here we are 30 years later. And chances are you both have somewhat different expectations in your relationship, different needs, different wants, different desires. Some may be the same, right? So here is the loaded question I will ask my clients. Each of them individually, this is the homework I will assign to them. If you could literally write your heart out, and you could, if I could ask you, what must be in a relationship for you to want to be in it? And that's when you want to start writing your heart out, as in just dream as big as you can dream. What must you have in your relationship for you to actually want to stay? Now, here's a little interesting fact, because sometimes people might say, well, I need respect, I need trust, I need intimacy. Big words, good words, but here's where it gets interesting. And for example, if I may ask you, Mark, what would be some of those things that you would say? What must be? And you can just be as high level as you want. What must be in your relationship for you to even want to stay? What might be some of those things?
Definitely trust and respect, and having open lines of communication with one another.
Excellent. Okay, great example. So notice how the first two words that you mentioned, trust, respect, actually in my world, we call this a nominalization. That is a concept word. And a concept word literally could mean 10 different things to 10 different people, right? Trust, what does that even mean? So this is where homework gets a bit deeper, because now let's just imagine both people answer trust and respect as their first primary value. Now you might be like, wow, this is great. This couple is total alignment. But what if I were to ask both of you, wait a minute, trust. How do you know you're getting trust? How specifically trust? What does trust mean to you? How would you know you're getting trust? How would you know you're giving trust? Now it gets a bit more interesting, because now the man might say, well, trust to me means don't go through my wallet, for example. And to her, trust means I should be able to tell you anything that's on my mind. Notice how even though we use the same words, but the meaning underneath the word is completely different for each person. Right? So even just with that word, imagine if now that couple got together and I said, trust, what do you mean by trust, Mark? Hey, trust, what do you mean by trust, Joan? Right? And now the couple can actually say, well, this is what I mean by trust. And now we can see whether we can be compatible, whether we can agree to give and to respect that about each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? So now the next thing is respect, right? Well, respect, what do you mean by respect? How do you know you're getting respect? Respect how? And that's when now the colors and the flavors will come in each person, where they can express respect. What do you mean by that? Now the person can actually gain a better understanding about each other. It's like, oh, this is what he or she means by trust. Oh, this is what they mean by respect. And already we're creating a little bit more intimacy and connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Right? And the last thing you said, right? Open a line of communication. That request was a bit more specific, more nuanced. That was a little bit more, I can kind of understand what exactly you mean by that. But even there, I would ask you, what specifically do you mean by that?
Well, I would say, open lines of communication dealing with trust, that if your example of going through the wallet, or, that she would admit, that she did that, or, just being honest through the communication, that there's nothing hidden.
Exactly. And so then the next question I would ask, which also is a very big, bold, and a meaningful question is, well, obviously I would have the couple, that first question, I would have the couple write until they're exhausted, until like that, these are the things I want in a relationship. And then I will ask them, list your first top 5. What are the 5 things that absolutely must, right? And so we would focus on those 5 things as we then coach the couple together so that we can understand that they want the same thing. And then the question would be, what would you absolutely not tolerate? What would cause you to be like, I'm done, I'm out, absolutely not. And then once again, much more gets revealed, right? Because some females might say, well, abuse, no way, or alcoholism, or whatever it might be. And I'm just making stuff up, right? But even just these ideas will help a couple gain a lot more understanding about, oh my God, I didn't realize he needed this, or this is what she meant by such and such. And that's how we now get the couple to communicate a little bit better with each other. Is this useful?
Yes, it is.
Good. Any questions about this specifically?
Well, with the respect topic, sometimes my wife may not see that she's disrespecting me, and she'll say things that can really hurt me, say, consider it like throwing darts at me. But she's not even aware that that's happening. So how would I make someone in a relationship aware that something like that is really injuring me emotionally?
Great question. And again, this probably affects so many people because here it is, you're hurt, you feel like a target, you feel attacked. She is just doing what she does. She doesn't even realize or may not realize she's doing it. She's just used to her way of communicating. And so this is where, Mark, your power can come in, where you can actually finally take a stand and basically say, wait a minute, hold on. This is not okay. So how can we communicate this? Well, I love the frame of the I frame. And what I mean by that is inviting your partner to a conversation. First of all, say, there's something important that's on my mind. Would you be open to a conversation about that? Because, and this is something I used to do a lot. I would just literally say what I wanted to say without any filter, without any preparing the person, and sometimes that can be like, wait a minute, that person may not even be ready for that conversation. They didn't even see me or hear me coming. And in fairness to them, not a good delivery, because we kind of want to let our partner know, heads up, something is about to happen, right? So we want to gently introduce them that, hey, there's something on my mind, something important I would like to discuss with you. When would be a good time for us to talk? Or would now be a good time for us to have this conversation, right? It's very permission seeking. It's also very elegant and kind, not only to you, but also to her, to say, this requires a timeout. This is important. And at the same time, when would be a good time? Right? Because right now she might be stressed. There might be a lot of things on her mind. Maybe right now would not be the best, even though it might be the best time for you, but she might not be ready. So this way, at least you know for sure, because here's what you're implying through my hypnotic language, right? What you're implying by saying that this conversation is going to happen. It just either is going to happen now or later, right? So we kind of snuck that in, which is good because it shows how important it is. So this conversation is important. Would you be open to having this conversation? When would be a good time? So now and the other thing, why this works so powerfully, now the other party is actually becoming curious, which helps us because we want them to be curious. And by the way, if, let's just say worst case scenario, she's not curious and she's not interested, she's like, I don't care, worst case scenario, well, that in itself speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right? And so right there, even though we opened the door a little bit, that gave us the opportunity to kind of test out, where's my partner even at? Like, do they even care about me enough to have a conversation with me?
I
Is that
notice that
fair?
happens
Is
a
that
lot
fair to
with
say?
me.
I'm sorry.
I notice that happens a lot with me. She'll go about her business like I never even asked for a time to speak.
So then maybe we can give her the opportunity to kind of, again, gently but firmly say, hey, there's something really important on my mind, something I'd like to discuss with you, just you alone. When would be a good time? Would you be open to a conversation? And
Yeah.
again, the response you get is going to speak volumes to you. Now, let's say best case scenario, she's like, sure, no problem. Let's do 5 o'clock tonight. Perfect. Let's just say you both agree. Now we got to take the next step, right? And remember, these are small but very significant steps in how we kind of set the perimeter, and then we go further, and then we go further. And that is what creates intimacy and connection and even passion with another human being. So the next step, let's just say we are having the meeting now. Now again, the I frame. Honey, this is really important to me. This conversation may be difficult to hear, right? I understand that it may not be comfortable to hear, may not be easy to have, but is it okay for me to tell you what I'm about to tell you? This was another invitation. Notice how soft and how inviting this is. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And how are you feeling as I'm sharing this with you? How is your body feeling as I'm kind of inviting you to this conversation if you were to play with me right now?
Well, I'm nervous. I get nervous about the upcoming conversation, not knowing what kind of outcome that can occur, kind of makes me feel shaky inside.
Well, as it should, right? Because remember, this is an important conversation. And we either have a choice now, we can turn a blind eye and just brush it under the rug like we used to. And that's going to create an outcome in itself that may not be favorable because things are just going to get swallowed down and that's just going to build up more resentment. Or for once, we can bring up the courage and say, you know what, this is important. And then let's just say your partner said, sure, tell me, what's on your mind? And if she has this kind of response, I would one more time ask, are you sure it's okay for me to tell you? One more invitation. And would it be fair, like when you're receiving this right now, does this also convey respect to the other person from your side? Do you feel like you're respecting her as a human being when you are being so gentle and slow in inviting her to this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so does this feel comfortable?
Yes.
Okay, and do you think that she might respond somewhat favorably to an approach like this?
Most of it, yes.
Okay, well, again, you know your partner better, so you could tweak it, right? Obviously, to make it so that it suits your relationship. And now is the time, though, we've come to the moment where now you're going to say what you wanted to say. And once again, the delivery is everything. You're going to shift your tonality into how you really feel. Because what you really feel, most likely you feel hurt, you feel unseen, you feel unimportant, and that's just a mind read based on what you told me. So you want to bring that emotion to the table and say, this is just a frame, right? This is something I would say. You know, lately, honey, I've been noticing that these are some of the things you said to me, and this is how I feel in response to that. Now, you may not mean anything by it, I don't know, but when you say these words and when you use these phrases or when you don't call me all day, I just don't even feel important anymore. I feel hurt. I feel not seen. I feel like, what do I even matter? And I wanted to have this conversation with you because, am I mind reading? Am I not seeing something? Like, is there something you want to say to me that maybe you have been holding back, or right? And so it's about, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm seeing, this is how I understand it. You're not accusing her, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it would be hard for me not coming across as if I'm accusing her. I think she would take it as I'm accusing her, but I'm not. I would be as soft as possible. I'm a nice, kind guy, and I would bring it, say it very direct, but in a nice, safe, kind way. But I think she would put up blockers or blinders on what I'm going to say, like a defense mechanism would switch on.
She
And
may.
I don't know how to go around that.
She may. And then you can go back to, I can see how angry you are. I can see how defensive you might be. I understand and appreciate, but this is how I feel in this relationship. This is my experience in this relationship. And nobody can deny that.
Now, is it okay to, we're talking about the I. So, even though I'm talking about myself at this time, is it possible to give her the time for her to respond as if she's talking from the I statement? Like, how do we do this without the interrupting each other?
So let's say you conveyed, this is how I feel. When you say certain things, I feel attacked, I feel hurt, I feel unseen, whatever it is you're really feeling, right? And now she might come back with, now ask her, what are you feeling about all of this? What's your experience about all of this? How are you, right? How is your, what are your thoughts about this in our relationship? Right? Let her have her opinion of this. And you're simply asking, you're being curious. And this is one of the things that I often see in couples where they mind read and they just assume he should know better, she should know. Well, that's not fair. But with curiosity and care and concern and question asking, what are your thoughts? How do you feel in all of this? What is happening when you walk out the door? How are you internalizing all of this? What's going through your mind? And the only way we will know what's happening first is if we ask these questions. Because now she can speak from her experience. And then ultimately, the two of you, if the moment is ready, you can then start to ask questions like, what are your thoughts on how we can make this better? What are your thoughts on how we can improve this? What are your thoughts on, what's missing for you from this relationship? And what can we possibly do together? Remember, notice my tonality too, Mark. This is very important, to speak slowly and use words like, what might we? What could we possibly? Those are implications. Those are gentle invitations that, what can we do about this? What do we need to do about this? That's very pressurizing. And that's a harsh delivery. That's not going to feel good. We're talking about tenderness in the heart. So what do you think we could potentially do? How do you think we could change this? What would cause you to feel better about this relationship? What is it that you need? This is another question that I used to ask my kids all the time, and it works really beautiful with spouses and partners too. I love this question because, again, it takes out the mind read. And the question is, what do you need more from me? What do you need less from me? Right? Because children might respond, well, you're always nagging me. You're always worried about me. Fair. You know what? You're right. I am always worried about you. So what do you need less of me? How could I, convey my care, my concern without you thinking that I'm worried about you and I don't trust that you can take care of yourself? Right? So that opens up a different conversation where now it's like, oh, that's how the person's really feeling. Is that useful?
Yes, it is.
Because now, right, we are each taking responsibility, the ability to respond to this is the mess we're in, or this is the mess we created, or this is what's happening right now. What can each of us do together with each other, for each other, so that we can create a bit more connection and more unity? And again, Mark, another, the response you get will speak volumes, right? Because if worst case, that person just gets defensive and they explode and they walk out the door and they're like, forget, like, just.
Right. And that actually leads me to another question, like, going into the conversation, should you have like a pre-planned agenda of like just one or two topics to talk about, to speak about with the spouse, rather than, like 10 or 20 different things that could be on my list. But no, I don't think it would be right to tackle all 20 at once. Is it better just to have one or two or three of them to focus on and just break it up throughout the week, spacing it out?
Great question. Great question. Such a meaningful question, because think about it. We're talking about human beings. We're talking about tenderness. We're talking about the heart. We're talking about vulnerability. And you're a school teacher, so you know best. Small, repeated often, right? Small lessons, repeated often. And the metaphor here is take one example, one topic, and this word sounds a bit cringy, but it's so useful. That first conversation alone is such a test. How open is she even? Is she even ready? Right? And if you can just bring one topic and that goes well, and if even her door is open a little bit, that's enough. And if she might just be ready for a 5-minute, that's, honey, you know what? Thank you for your time. I'm just so glad I was able to get this off my chest. I know this was a lot today. Maybe this was too. Thank you. I really appreciate, I just got this off. I appreciate your time. Even if she only had 3 minutes, right? Really show that appreciation and say, you know what? It really shows me that you care and there's hope for us and that we actually can communicate and that we can come together. So a small dosage, it's just like medicine, right? A little thing at a time, and then repeat it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Because even in the classroom, right, you don't come in with the whole curriculum. First grade, you learn how to write the A, and you make them do it 50 times. And then once they finally start to not wobble anymore, okay, guys, great job. Now we're ready for the next letter. Because again, just even in that one conversation, already you will learn so much about each other. And you can also see, Mark, whether the care and the concern and the curiosity and the vulnerability that you bring, whether that's even reciprocated. It may not be on the same level. And we're not looking for tit for tat, right? We're looking, is she even willing to bring a little bit?
But what happens during the conversation? It becomes tit for tat. How do you put a stop to that right away, so that it doesn't blow up into a major argument?
Well, that's exactly what you can say then. By the way, we only have 2 minutes left. If you were my client right now, I would actually ask you for a specific moment where you unpack it, but exactly what you said. You can simply say, something, I see that this is going to just a much bigger, how about if we just end it here? How about if we just agree to just, I think both of us were courageous to just come to this. I can see where you're coming from. You can see where I'm coming from. Should we just kind of put it to rest right now so that we don't fall into an old pattern again, and just let it simmer for a little bit and see how we both feel, And really just kind of cut it off there and say, I can see how both of us are getting agitated. This may not be the best way for us to go, let's just kind of bring it back down and give each of us the appreciation and the grace we were able to do. Is that helpful?
Sense. Yes, that makes sense.
Cool. So in closing, so like I said, we only have about a minute. First of all, I want to thank you, Mark, for such really good questions that every couple is faced with. Every couple is going through this, and so many couples fall into these bad, destructive patterns that can easily be avoided, right? By even just a framework like that, a very gentle, may I, would it be okay, can we have a conversation, right? And even just practicing, and again, being a teacher, you are a fan of practice. So I'm going to leave it like this with our audience, practicing this framework anywhere, any place, by the way. It doesn't have to be with your partner. Even in a supermarket. Hey, excuse me, sir, do you realize that I was in line too? Right? A very gentle kind of nudge and like, hey, excuse me, I was in line too. I don't know if you realized. And just practice these very kind, compassionate conversation frames with people. And then the response you get is just going to be so much warmer and lighter and heartfelt. Make sense? Thanks again, Mark. We got 5 seconds, so thank you everybody for watching. And remember to send your questions anytime. Take care. Bye-bye.